Hey guys, my name is Milena, and my partner's name is Belen. We both came together to create a good presentation on nomenclature, chemical naming. Well, let's get to it.
Well, there are two types of ions, which are first, cations and second, anions. The cations are positive charged, meaning more protons than the number of electrons. Anions are negative charged, in which there's more electrons than the number of protons. Cations are formed by the loss of one or more electrons by an atom. For example, when we use a sodium atom and loses one electron, it forms a sodium ion. Now the ions of all the metal elements are cations, like it is shown.
You might be asking yourself, what is an anion? Well, an anion is a negative charged ion. An anion is formed by the gain of one or more electrons by an atom. For example, a chlorine atom gains one electron to form a chloride ion, Cl negative, which is an anion.
Roman numerals are sometimes used when naming an ionic compound. It is also used when the metallic element forms more than one common ion. For example, CuCl. Cu is copper and Cl is chloride. Cu has a charge of +1 or +2. So in this case, like the answer is CuCl, then the copper is going to be a positive because Cl is a negative. An ionic compound is formed as a result of the attractions between a positive charged ion, known as the metals and the nonmetals. Ionic bonding results from the transfer of electrons from one atom to another. To determine the formula, use the crisscross method.
Well, what is a covalent compound? Well, a covalent compound are formed when two nonmetals react with each other. First, you will have to memorize the prefixes that are up to 10 atoms. Second, by using the correct prefixes, we have to start naming the compound. You attach prefixes to any part of the compound that has multiple atoms. For example, CO would be carbon monoxide, and CO2 would be carbon dioxide. Dioxide, because it uses the D for 2. Monoxide, for carbon monoxide, it's mono because it's only one.
Polyatomic ion is an ion with the comprised of one or a group of atoms that have a charge. To determine which one is a polyatomic ion is when you see two or more capital letters in a formula, or when it's named, it has the endings of ATE or ITE. The rules are that the cation is written first in the name and the anion is written second in the name. When the formula unit contains two or more or the same polyatomic, the ion is written in parentheses and the subscript written outside. So the parentheses are required only when you need more than one bunch of a particular polyatomic.
Formulas to names. There are 3 main steps to do this. First step, you have to know what makes a compound ionic. So an ionic compound contains a metal and a non-metal. For this, you could refer to your periodic table, you could use the one online, or some in back of your agendas, school agendas. Step 2, build the name. The first part of the name is the name of the metal element. The second part is the name of the non-metal element with the suffix "ide". For example, Al2O3, Al2. Aluminum and oxygen, right? So the name would be aluminum oxide. And last step, you have to recognize the transitions metals in the D and F blocks of the periodic table are known as transition metals. Their charge is written with a Roman numeral. When writing out the compound name, this is because they can have more than one charge and make more than one compound. Example, FeCl2 and FeCl3. Iron is Fe. Cl2 is chloride and Cl3 is chloride with a -3. The names would be iron 2 chloride and iron 3 chloride. Names to formulas. The first one would be no prefix, which is ionic. First step, we have to determine the ion's percent and the charge on each. Roman numerals equal constant charge. Otherwise, use PT. Step number 2, you have to balance the formulas crisscross. Last step, which is 3, would be reduce subscripts if needed. And with the prefix, which is covalent, step 1, we have to forget charges, which is very important, forget them. Step 2, use prefixes to determine subscripts. And last but not least, you do not reduce subscripts. You got that? You do not reduce subscripts, okay?
Determining a chemical formula of an ionic compound. To determine the chemical formula of an ionic compound from its chemical name. First, you have to identify the ion present, both cation and anion, from the name. For example, potassium sulfide. The cation is potassium and the anion is sulfide. Second, determine the ionic charge of the ions. Example, using the same. Now you change potassium to an ion which is K positive and sulfide ion to S with the charge of -2. Step 3. Determine the number of each ion needed to obtain a neutral compound. For example, 2 K positive ions are needed to form every S2 negative. And lastly, 4. Combine the chemical symbols of the ions to get the final chemical formula. Meaning, there has to be now K2S in the formula for potassium sulfide.
In order to go from formulas to names to formulas, you need a whiteboard, a paper, whatever you have, expo markers, as you can see, dry erase markers, and a periodic table, and something to erase your whiteboard with. Our first example from name to formula is barium oxide. By using the periodic table, we know that Ba is barium. We also know that oxygen is the same thing as oxide, and it's gonna stand for O. So if we put this all together, we get BaO, our answer, and we're done with this example. Our second example is tin for chromate. Looking at the periodic table, we see that tin stands for or is Sn in the periodic table. Now that we know this, we're going to write it down right at the bottom of tin. Now using this handout that the teacher gave us, we're going to look for chromate, and we know that it's CrO4. So we're going to write that down in parentheses. And we're going to add the 2 since we know that tin has a 2. plus 2. This is gonna be your answer for tin for chromate.